All right, our next speaker before our lunch break, which will be an abbreviated lunch break, is Marty Bortz, Secretary of CAV.
All right. Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's always a tough gig right before lunch, so I will keep it lively and sprightly. Can I get just a big round of applause for all the presenters, please? Everything's, yep. Yeah, I just love coming here. As I said to Justin, it's my second favorite weekend next to Underland. Sorry, I had to say it. Yeah, a bit about me. Um, yeah, so I've told this story a few times at this forum, but there's a lot of new faces, so I'll say it again. I think burner culture probably didn't transform my life. I think it was a continuation of a journey I started in my late teens, and I think it gave me a language and a community to talk to about a whole range of ideas that had just been, evolving and thinking about. And really, the central question was, can a festival change the world? I think we've had, probably, I imagine, many people in this room have had some kind of deep, profound, transformative experience at a burn, at a festival. That's why we're here. That's why we give so much of our time. And so I asked this question, and I asked it again and again and again and again. And eventually it led me to writing a book on that question specifically. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting it published at the moment, so I am looking at evolving the project. But what I've done today is adapt one of the chapters. And really, my central thesis in the book is that the festival environment is a place of imagination and it's a place of reimagination. And if nothing else, we are facing a crisis of imagination globally. And I think so many of the social problems we face is because we cannot imagine alternative worlds to inhabit. And I think the festival and the burn environment specifically allow us to do that. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about how the festival environment, the burn environment, allows us to reimagine time. But before I do that, I just want to acknowledge I am talking to you on Gadigal country. I live and work on Wurundjeri country. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, to pay those same respects to any Aboriginal person who's joining us today, and to say that I look forward to a time of voice, treaty, and truth. All right, so time. This is a great, the great Dolly Parton said it better than I can, right? And I think this line from the song that most of us know, working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. And I think this really highlights the ways in which, and as I will talk about, the ways in which time has been a system of control. It's been used as a system of control. It's been commodified. And what I want to do in this talk is just to muddy up your conceptualization of time. What does it actually mean? How do we experience it? What's the embodiment of time in our lives? And we typically associate time with what we measure on the clock. But that's not the only way to experience it. So the Greeks had 3 words for time. So chronos, kairos, and aeon. And so chronos is the root word of chronological. It is the ticking of the clock. This is how we often experience time in the workspace, in our day-to-day lives. I need to be here at a certain time. I need to give my presentation at 12:30, I think. Kairos is where time seems to stand still. Deep moments of grief, experiences of joy, time dilates. It's the dance floor at 4 a.m. when time seems to be going so quickly, but also so slowly. And then there's aeon, which is circular time, the time in which we come back to year after year. It's our ritual time. We can think about it in these different ways. It's eternal cyclical time. Capital turned time into money. Time is money, but it wasn't always money. And so what we might call the pre-industrial period, it wasn't time oriented, it was task oriented. You did the work because the work needed to be done. We need to eat, we're going to go and fish. That's what we need to do. I'm not trying to sell it on the market. I need to eat. So I do the work, I do the fishing, and I do it when it needs to be done. So that's what we might call a task orientation. Then the industrial period happened, and we moved towards a time orientation. Clocks spread rapidly in the 14th century. Labour becomes a commodity, something you can sell in the market. You sell hours, not outcomes. I'm going to talk about Frederick F.W. Taylor in a little bit, just to expand on that middle point. And then we have the total colonization of time. Anyone who's worked in a law firm or an accounting firm or a consulting firm will know this all too well in time sold in 6-minute blocks, in doing your timesheet, pay by the hour. We send our kids to school at specific hours to train them to exist in a world that is constructed by the 9-to-5 day. We schedule our leisure time. So yeah, Frederick Taylor, the father of what's called scientific management. It's pretty hard to overstate how influential Taylor has been on our working lives. And he was what we call an efficiency engineer, an industrialist in the late 19th century. And he did what was called the stop motion study. So he wanted to extract as much labor value from his workers. And what he did was what was called a time stop motion study. And what that was, he literally measured how long it took the factory workers to do their jobs. And he would systematize that. And his ideas are, you see them, once you understand his work, you can see them everywhere in how we structure our organizations, in like billable hours. That's this sort of Taylorist mentality. He was working and writing and thinking around the same time as Henry Ford. But he wanted to get to really controlling time as a way of controlling the worker. So in this time orientation, we become inputs. We're not people. I once heard a senior manager, a job I worked at, called me a resource. Right? To my face. I mean, look, in fairness, it was to my face. But he turned around to me and said, "You are an untested resource." I'm like, okay. So yes, Taylor's goal is to isolate the human variable and control it. This is what we see in most workplaces today. We lose the cyclical. When we see time as linear, we forget to come back to those same points. I've heard a lot this weekend about iteration and design thinking and evolution. This is models of work that are circular. We come back to the same point. Henry Ford said history is bunk. He doesn't care about what happens in the past. He just wants to move that way, right? And then we, of course, forget history and the obvious cliche, you don't learn from the past, you make the same mistakes. We measure hours, not outcomes. So we don't measure what change. I see this a lot in my professional work. People are more interested in just, the numbers, how many bumps on seats, how many dollars did we spend, blah, blah, blah. What are you actually achieving? What change are you making in the world? Those numbers don't tell you that. So we fill time rather than use it, and we lose the sacred. It's just chronos all the way down. So I want to put to you as a form of politics. Yeah. But in all seriousness, I do believe that. I think what we do is an act of organized resistance. It is inhabiting new spaces. It's finding new ways of being, right? It is saying, some people say it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism, right? And actually, I think that's really where our counter work happens. That imagining alternative spaces that don't necessarily require that capitalist logic. And this is, returning each year in the ritual way that we do that is a form of reimagination. So how does this happen? So we don't check our watch when to do things. Having been involved in festival and burn culture for half of my life, I'll do what I do when I'm doing it. I stopped caring who was playing on the market stage at Rainbow because it didn't matter. It was, if I see them, great. If the dance floor's rocking for some DJ I've never heard of, that's even better. And it just it reframed how I go about my day. These spaces outside of time, the temple is a big one for me. Is that moment, and my first burn, 2014 on Playa, to 30,000 people sitting in silence, watching a structure that big burn down, like the time dilation is enormous, right? They're suspended, they're charged. You're not. I don't even know how long it takes, right? It just happens. But then the ritual time, Mad Monday, Rainbow Serpent, Tutu Tuesday on Playa. These are rituals, right? I can't remember if it was the year I went or the year before, but radical ritual was a theme one year for Burning Man. I think it was maybe 2013, if I remember correctly. These are ritual times. These are cyclical times. These are things we keep coming back to because they have meaning. Yeah, that's just what I said. But I also want to draw parallels to Aboriginal culture as well, and so it's the concept of every when, right? That's not that's an anthropologist in the 60s, W.H. Stratton. It's his word for Aboriginal concept of time that encompasses country, deep history, past, present, and future are all coexisting, right? This is I'm drawing parallels in thought, but we see these similar ideas pop up. So this is similar to the aeon. It has existed in different forms, and I'm just trying to muddy up our understanding of what time is and how it expresses itself. So we stop capital's clock. We return to a task orientation. We do what speaks to us, what's fueling our fire. Where is the burn taking me? We create ritual. We create moments of return, and some of these moments that exist outside of ordinary time as well. So but of course, there are risks and there are challenges, and it's always that sense of integration. So one of the arguments I make in the book is to say, well, the burn offers a place for reimagination, but there is work to be done outside of that. So the burn, how do you then take the lessons, the insights, the experiences, and bring them out into a world that is pushing back as hard as it can in the other direction, right? How do you still inhabit those spaces? I don't think the burn just happens at the burn. I think these are the kinds of spaces when we can have these conversations, when we can be together in a real and deep and meaningful way, I think is as much of the burn. How does task orientation survive the commute? How do we give people that experience outside of chronological time? And I just wanted to end with that one. Thank you.
Okie doke.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Marty. That was amazing.